Hello and welcome to our February third-party roundup webinar with Syxsense. Today, we have our industry expert, John Cassell, here to give us an inside look on the newest third-party patch releases. If you have any questions, add them to the chat, and John will reach out after to answer those. And with that, I'll pass things over to John Cassell.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this month's third-party roundup webcast. Today, I will be covering some of the most popular third-party applications that have received updates since last month's webcast in January. There have been a number of security bulletins and advisories throughout the month. I'm going a little slow. There's actually a lot of information to cover, so I should probably speed up. But as well, there are a lot of multiple version updates, again, across various products. I'm just going to jump straight into it. As a background on application content, most third-party manufacturers, we have no idea when they're really going to be provided. If there's a vulnerability that's been disclosed, we know that the manufacturer is pretty much on the line there. But other than that, they could drop at any time of the month. Most manufacturers have, again, no guaranteed release cadence to rely on, but some we do. We know that Microsoft drops their updates on Tuesdays, the big one being the second Tuesday of the month, which is called Patch Tuesday. They've been doing this for nearly 2 decades now, I believe. Going up on, about 2 decades now. Used to say a decade, but I know I'm kind of aging myself. It's been a little older than that. Some other manufacturers have followed suit, such as Adobe. They now drop their updates on the exact same date. We'll be covering some of those. And then I also perform this webcast on the last Tuesday of the month, just so I can ensure that I capture most of the month's releases. Few I missed from the last couple days of last month, so we will be covering those too. So I do pick up from the previous month. But as a precursor, I always like to discuss as well a little bit more about what we cover, just so you understand a little bit more about vulnerabilities and patches. Let's briefly discuss what a vulnerability is versus a patch, or what an update does, rather. A vulnerability is a bug or misconfiguration in a product, in an application or an operating system that, if exploited, allows that product or system to be compromised by an attacker. Whereas a patch or an update is instead a piece of software or code published by the vendor of that product or system to resolve the vulnerability. With that being said, not all vulnerabilities can be patched, and not all patches resolve vulnerabilities. Some, of course, are optional. Or it might be a feature update, actually, just producing new features that end users like, but it may not be security related. If a vulnerability exists in a product or system, but no patch or workaround is available yet, then the vulnerability is considered a zero-day exploit, of course, if it has recently been disclosed. Before we get into the updates, how do we prioritize them? There are multiple strategies out there, but here at Syxsense, we focus on 6 different factors. The first is going to be vendor severity, and this typically ranges from critical severity to non-applicable, or again, optional. Comes directly from the manufacturer of that update. It is important to always check the vendor advisory of all updates. However, do bear in mind that it could clearly be a biased rating. Many third-party manufacturers, or updates rather, don't receive severities from their manufacturers, as it would, of course, highlight the product in a negative light. We have been seeing this changing over the past couple of years. Manufacturers are being held to higher standards now, especially here in the United States, in which, of course, this information must be disclosed or there will be hefty fines. To combat this, we instead prioritize the industry severity more, such as the CVSS or the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, calculated by an independent organization. The score ranges from 0 to 10, with 10 being the most severe and critical. The higher the rating typically entails higher possibility of exploitation. And there are a lot of other factors, of course, that go into this score. The score can go higher. Usually I don't see it go lower, but it can certainly go higher based on days after and vulnerabilities have been exploited or disclosed, whatever. In which factors, well, I guess I just explained that if it is exploited after it's been disclosed, that would, of course, be one factor to raise the score. And that's actually the next point, weaponization. It means that it is actively being exploited in the wild and can affect any individual or environment at this exact moment by sophisticated attacks. These are the ones that we're worried about. When vulnerabilities become publicly disclosed, it means that the information is out there. It's been exposed to the industry. Doesn't necessarily mean that it is currently being exploited, but that the details are out there and how to weaponize it. These are typically published by bug bounty programs, independent researchers, sometimes the manufacturer. Internally, we may never hear about this type of information, but again, if it's disclosed, we have heard about it. Countermeasures are a possibility as well and are provided in a few ways. So mitigation, such as a configuration from an antivirus or an EDR that is stopping the vulnerability in its tracks without urgently deploying a patch. And the other countermeasure is a workaround, such as a registry, policy, or service configuration change that also prevents the vulnerability from being exploited. Great example of this, I usually mention this, is when Microsoft provides recommended policy or registry change without the need to deploy an out-of-band update. And finally, the sixth factor in determining our strategy is the exposure. And the breakdown is based on what tool or solution is being used to detect and report on outstanding vulnerabilities across the device fleet. Of course, every environment's different. Every one of my customers has a slightly different use case, slightly different breakdown. And this typically includes various versions of operating systems. So it is very important to know where the vulnerabilities exist so that we can better target our endpoints for remediation. We're going to jump straight into it. The third-party products have all received some type of security advisory. So I don't just talk about general third-party updates. So I'll provide a list at the end, but the main focus for these products are what has been disclosed, what's been exploited, what would be the highest kind of urgency there. We usually cover a lot of the same products month after month, so the popular browsers, and then we'll talk about any additional ones, which today we have a few new products we've not discussed in the past. The first one, though, you see this month after month, and another reason for it is that they do drop updates with Microsoft, and that would be Adobe. The first product to get an update on February 13th, all products got an update on February 13th. First one is Adobe Commerce, 5 security fixes, 2 critical with 9.1 CVSS scores, 3 important with lower scores. The first critical is tracked as CVE 2024. 20719 related to cross-site scripting requiring authentication to exploit. The second critical was tracked to CVE 2024-20720 related to improper neutralization of special elements in OS command and also requires authentication to exploit. And both could lead to arbitrary code execution if exploited. Next product was Substance 3D Painter with 9 security fixes. 6 rated critical, and all with a CVSS of 7.8, with 3 important with lower scores. Vulnerability categories include buffer overflow, out of bounds read, out of bounds write, and the important rated vulnerabilities all lead to memory leak. Probably the biggest one from this month was Acrobat and Reader. Received an update for Windows and macOS devices with 13 security fixes, 5 rated critical, 8 important. One of the critical vulnerabilities has a CVSS score of 8.8 and is related to use after free, which if exploited could lead to arbitrary code execution. And the rest of the vulnerabilities are related to out of bounds read, out of bounds write, integer overflow, and improper input validation. Because that one has a CVSS of 8.8 and there is a total number of 13 security fixes, I would say that that was the big product of the month. However, moving on to the next one, FrameMaker Publishing Server received an update specifically for Windows systems to resolve a single critical. This is tracked to CVE 2024-20738 related to improper authentication. If exploited, it could lead to security feature bypass, and this actually has a base score of 9.8. I don't know too many that are using the product, but if you are, do prioritize an upgrade. That is a near perfectly critical score, I should say, if that's the term, as the max is 10, and that's nearly there. Adobe Audition received an update for Windows and macOS devices to resolve a single critical vulnerability related to heap buffer overflow that again could lead to arbitrary code execution. It has a CVSS of 7.8. Leaving us with Substance 3D Designer. There is a single critical out of bounds read vulnerability with a high severity of 7.8. It is worth noting that Adobe does provide a vendor priority along with all of their security bulletins. We do appreciate it. All products mentioned here do have a typical priority of 3. So this information is just like when looking at the CVSS score coming from very similar data and research. If the information is publicly disclosed, I usually see an Adobe priority of 2. And if it's currently exploited, it has a priority of 1. So they kind of flip the scale there. The higher the score, the better. Less likely to exploit. The lower the score, if you see an Adobe advisory of stamped with a priority of 1, that is probably related to exploitation. The next product had actually an easier month, which is great because I usually bash them month after month for all the 0 days. Google Chrome has had 5 releases since our last webcast. Once again, for the 6th month in a row now, Google actually dropped an update for Chrome on the day of our webcast. So I wasn't able to get to it last month. They did drop it on the 30th. So we're going to start from there. I'm beginning to think that they like dropping updates on the last Tuesday, which lines up with my webcast. On the 30th, they had, I'm sorry, I mixed up my slides here. Sorry, it was the 30th, not the 31st. On the 30th, there were 4 total security fixes, with 3 of them disclosed by external researchers. This particular release also had a maximum of $8,000 in bounties. All 3 of the fixes are rated as high severity. The first, just to speed up here, I'm not going to go over the actual CVE, but it was regarding use after free issue in Canvas, initially reported by Anonymous on December 14th and garnered a $5,000 payout. Second was regarding another use after free issue in WebRTC and was reported by Cassidy Kim back on December 29th with a $3,000 payout. And the third fix was related to use after free but in network, and it was reported by a researcher from the Microsoft Security Research Center on December 13th, and there was no offered payout. Wow. Well, I believe it's because, of course, Microsoft does provide researching because, well, Edge is based on Chrome, and we'll get to that. On February 6th, there were 3 total security fixes, with only 2 disclosed by researchers. Both are rated high severity. The first is a use after free issue in Mojo and was again reported by Anonymous on January 25th and included a $5,000 bounty. The second issue was related to heap buffer overflow in Skya and was reported by Jorge Buzetti, I believe that's how you pronounce it, on January 25th, but hasn't had that payout yet determined. I'm hoping for a fat payout to you, dude, but have not seen that updated on their site yet. On the 13th of February, it included a single security fix. However, it was addressed in-house and Google's not disclosed relevant information, which takes us to the next version of Chrome. On the 20th, this was the big release of the month, I would say, brought Chrome to version 122 for Windows, Mac, and Linux devices. There were a total of 12 security fixes, with 8 of them being disclosed by external researchers. $28,000 total in payout for this version. One of the 8 disclosed issues, out of the 8 disclosed issues, 2 are rated as high severity, 5 medium severity, and 1 low severity. The first high severity issues tracked as CVE 2024-1669 is related to out of bounds memory access in Blink. It was again reported by Anonymous on January 26th and garnered a $7,000 payout. The second high severity issue is related to use after free in Mojo. It was again reported by Cassidy Kim on December 6th and got Cassidy an extra $5,000. Well done. Rest of the issues from this Chrome release include insufficient policy enforcement and inappropriate implementation issues. The latest release dropped on, I might amend this in just a moment, but dropped on February 22nd. However, there were no security fixes to highlight per their webpage. And like the last few months, I'm going to go ahead and just double check Chrome's release notes really fast in case they drop something over the last couple minutes. Nope. So if they do drop it later today, don't worry. If you attend next month's webcast, I will again go over that. Anywho, I do like to bring this up anytime I'm discussing Chrome, as I have been doing for quite a few years. Looking back, 2021 was a very tough year for Google as the browser had 16 0 days. 2022 ended with 9, and 2023 ended with 8. This year has already kicked off with 1 0-day exploit from last month, but I'm hoping for a lower number this year. So let's try and get below 8. I'd like it to be 0, obviously. Yes, I'm fine moving on and having a shorter webcast. It's great to talk about these things. but also appreciate less vulnerabilities, of course, that are actually exploited. Bear in mind that many other Chromium browsers have received updates as well, such as Opera, Brave, and the next one, Microsoft Edge. Edge had quite a few releases. I'm not going to cover every single one of them, just the relevant releases. There are a number of them that, as we can see on the slide, even share the same date, and really all their release notes page says there were various bugs and for performance issues fixed. So just to cover the relevant ones, as they sometimes do resolve vulnerabilities in their browser, but were not actually related to the Chromium code. On February 1st, there was an Edge-specific vulnerability tracked as CVE 2024-21399 related to remote code execution. It was assigned a CVSS of 8.3, making it near critical, and has a network attack vector as well as requires user interaction. There was a release on the 5th of February that was minor, but it did highlight that there was an issue where the internet file links enabled policy didn't work as expected when accessing file links. So be aware of that one. Moving all the way down to February 15th, there was actually an interesting advisory. So on the 15th, Microsoft's release notes stated that Edge has a feature that provides an option to import browser data on each launch from other browsers with user consent. This feature state might not have been syncing and displaying correctly across multiple devices. They reported this is fixed. There were also 2 additional Edge management policy changes around platform and cloud machine policy overrides. Big release for this month was on the 23rd. There were 4 new feature updates, 6 new policies, 1 obsoleted policy, and 1 change within diagnostic data. In the feature updates, I'll keep this short. But I do want to list all 4 for everyone on the call today. Moving managed site indicator into the lock icon in the address bar Omnibox to improve end user experience. The image enhancement feature is deprecated. I'm paraphrasing here as much as possible. I'm looking at the release notes page. The MS Edge management service now provides admins with the ability to set recommended policies, but also gives end users permission to override their admin's policy configuration. That's interesting. And then Microsoft Edge has rebranded web capture to screenshot, and admins can now control the availability of this feature with web capture enabled policy. We usually don't see a feature release without a few Edge specific vulnerabilities, and this one had 3. As listed on the slide, so I won't go over the CVEs. The first was an information disclosure vulnerability with a CVSS of 8.2. This is ending in 26192, requiring user interaction, but no exploitability assessment was provided, which is interesting. I saw the field blank, so maybe they haven't assessed that yet. The next one, 21423, was an information disclosure vulnerability, had a lower score, doesn't require user interaction, exploitation is less likely. And the last one, 26188, was a spoofing vulnerability, but also a lower score of 4.3. User interaction is required. Exploitation is again less likely. I don't see any new releases from them this morning as well, but again, I always check. Want to be up to date on this webcast. Mozilla Firefox had a relatively light month. 2 releases. I'm kind of seeing a trend here. They usually do a follow-up release from the previous month, and then they do a new release, and then next month we'll see a 123.0.1, since this month took us to 123. There were minor fixes in the 122.0.1 release. However, in the 123 release, for main release and extended release users, there were 12 security fixes, 4 high, 6 moderate, 2 low severity. Security fixes include out-of-bounds memory read and networking channels, alert dialogues, could have been spoofed on another site, invalid memory access, incorrect code generation, and the typical high-severity monthly memory safety bugs that we see. This release also integrates search into Firefox View, allowing search across all of the tabs, recent browsing, closed tabs, and history. And additionally, the web compatibility reporting tool allows end users of Firefox and Thunderbird, the same, to report issues directly to Mozilla through the browser. Of course, any updates to Firefox typically also include security fixes to Mozilla Thunderbird. There might be a few extra in Thunderbird, but they do share a common code base. FileZilla also dropped a single update. to version 3.66.5. It's a very minor release, but there was an advisory. There was a GNU TLS vulnerability rated with a CVSS of 7.5. This is tracked as CVE 2024-0553. The advisory states that the response times to malformed ciphertexts and RSA pre-shared key, cipher suite, client key exchange differ from the response times of ciphertexts with correct padding. The issue may allow a remote attacker to perform a timing side channel attack on the RSA pre-shared key exchange, potentially leading to leakage of the sensitive data. It also garnered many other advisories, as of course this is leveraged in many other solutions. The advisories did come generally from OpenWall, Red Hat, Debian, and Fedora. Last but not least, you probably heard about the ConnectWise Screen Connect attacks from last week. On February 19th, ConnectWise issued a security advisory concerning its RMM software. The advisory highlighted two vulnerabilities affecting older versions of Screen Connect, which had been resolved in version 23.9.8 in subsequent releases. According to ConnectWise, these vulnerabilities are classified as critical and entail authentication bypass and path traversal issues from the server software itself, rather than the client software. Attackers have been able to deploy malware to servers or workstations with the client software installed. Sophos has also reported ongoing attacks targeting both servers and client machines. It's also important to note that patching the server will not automatically remove any malware or web shells, of course, that attackers may have already deployed. So it's very important that compromised environments be thoroughly investigated. Cloud-hosted implementations of Screen Connect did receive mitigations promptly. However, self-hosted instances remain vulnerable until they are manually upgraded. On February 21st, proof of concept code was released on GitHub that exploits the vulnerabilities and effectively adds a new user to the compromised system. The CVEs are on the slide, CVE 2024, 1708, and 1709. And they were both critical. I think it was 9.8 and 10 respectively. If you also have an older version of Screen Connect and are no longer supported under maintenance, ConnectWise is allowing you to install up to version 22.4 at no additional cost to alleviate the 1709 vulnerability. So do make sure that you perform that. Some additional products have also received updates since the start of the month. These include, and there are actually more to list on the screen, so I'm going to list them all out for everybody. Amazon Workspaces, Bitwarden, many Cisco products, of course, including WebEx. They get an advisory usually every month, and CISA recognizes that. Thank you. Citrix, Workspace, Dropbox, Genesis Cloud, Google Drive, Jenkins, KeyPass, Malwarebytes, Power BI, Notepad++, RingCentral, ShareFile, Skype, WinSCP, Wireshark, and Zoom. So do make sure if you have any of these products, as well as overall any third-party solutions should be updated. Don't keep any legacy products on endpoints, or you're allowing yourself open to exploitation. This was, again, another month for Apple. Is actually an easy month. Kidding. I've been talking about 0 days with Apple for, I feel like, the last year. Fortunately, this was a fairly easy month. There was a 0 day, but it probably didn't affect you. Compared to, again, all the previous months where this has been a very large slide and I've spent some time here. This is going to be easy for us. Between January 31st and February 12th, 6 products were updated and only one had a documented CVE. Sadly, it was also exploited in the wild. This was for Vision OS. It received an update to version 1.0.2 on January 31st to resolve a single type confusion issue that, if exploited, could lead to arbitrary code execution. And of course, Apple stated that on their website that they are aware of reports that the issue may have been exploited. The rest of the products that received standard updates include watchOS, macOS Sonoma, iOS and iPadOS 17, Safari 17, and Vision OS also got the latest version on February 12th, taking it from 1.0.2 to 1.0.3. I know that Apple doesn't really count as a third-party product, but I like covering it on the webcast just to inform my Apple audience, and as well gives me some additional material there, because of course there are a lot of 0 days, unfortunately. We do appreciate everything that Apple does, as well as all other manufacturers in supporting the advisories. If we didn't hear about it, then of course it's what we don't hear about, but we like hearing about it, knowing of course what can affect us, and as well the solution that the manufacturer provides. which of course gives us plenty of updates to then discuss. Do also make sure you check the App Store. I hope that this has been informative and useful to everyone. And if you enjoy the form of the webcast, please, or not, actually, please contact us and let us know. Every day, our team identifies, classifies, and pre-checks various patches and vulnerabilities that affect common endpoints and servers. To get a full listing of the various issues that may impact your environment, be sure to check the Syxsense website. You'll see under resources a link to the vulnerability database. What I love about the vulnerability library is that it doesn't just discuss level of impact like everyone else, but we do offer recommendations and solutions to every issue. If you have any further questions, concerns, or suggestions for improvement, we would love to hear it. Thank you for your time and happy patching.